Chapter 12. As the sun says its farewell to the Wasteland for the night, Rod and Elena continue their stakeout in the armored van. Rod is still snug in his seat, fast asleep. Elena, on the other hand, is reading an old, forgotten story from the world that's long past. A small light hangs on her glasses, pointing at the faded ink. Even with the illuminated companion, she still squints at every other word. The vastly educated young woman is able to decipher the pale black letters to create the intended words. Gramps made it a point to teach his granddaughter how to read and write. He instilled a belief that if civilization is to survive this apocalypse, they would need to recount and document all that they can. Humanity will have to someday learn from all their past sins to move forward in a generation of light and love. Every day they would play word games and build puzzles together. Gramps knew that he couldn't be there forever. Someday she would have to venture out into this unforgiving world with only the knowledge he gave her. The time-worn grandfather knew many hunters, with Rod being one of them and possibly his favorite. They have been friends for quite some time. When Elena was fairly young, Rod would help in self-defense lessons, often stopping by between contracts and expecting her to practice while he was away. When he returned, he'd test the young child. If she passed, he would go on to the next lesson. They had a kindred connection with each other. Elena always looked up to him as a big brother. The apprentice hunter would study extra hard when Rod left, so when test time came, she would not disappoint him, which she could never do anyway. On his prolonged stays, Rod would take his little shadow out into the wasteland and give her survival training. He would teach her about plants, which types were safe to eat, and which were used for medicinal purposes. Rod periodically slipped in some hunter training, even though Gramps disapproved during her younger years. He taught Elena basic rune reading and how to place runes in a certain order for special effects. Painting certain runes on a blade allowed you to hurt a ghoul or poltergeist. She devoured this information and craved it like sugar. Her brain was a sponge in overdrive. The youngling had an uncanny ability to retain the information quickly, which explained her tinkering talent. As far as anyone knew, Gramps had the largest collection of old-world literature, consisting of books, magazines, and discs, second only to the Grand Library in the Dark City. Through many rummaging trips and a lot of trial and error, they were able to get an old television and disc player working. Their small collection consisted of some music discs, old mechanic videos, documentaries, and some movies. There was even a disc of Pilates that Gramps and Elena would follow every evening after supper. The old man wasn't any good at it, but Elena took to it quite well. Though she may be young and reckless, the tools and training she received from Gramps and Rod made her a very well-rounded hunter, with many skill sets that will allow her to traverse the most barren and vicious regions of the Wasteland. She flips through to the next page, with her eyes tracking each word that clutters the paper. Her eyes widen for a second, then a look of complete disgust washes over her sun-kissed face.
Vampires don't act like that at all. Where'd they get these awful ideas? Have they never seen a damn vampire?
She tosses the book into the back of the van, then throws her hands in the air while conversing with herself.
Why was everyone so sad? God, they didn't have anything to be sad about.
Taking off her glasses, the young tinker rubs her eyes, trying to shake away drowsiness. Placing them back on, she looks at the console. The window for Poppy's text is blinking. She taps the screen, bringing the window to the forefront. Excitedly, she slaps Rod's shoulder.
Wake up! 2 vehicles are pulling up to the site.
Rod jerks awake. He rubs the sleep from his eyes and reaches for his tin case. Lighting up a cigarette, Rod looks to the video feed that Elena brought up. 2 very large garbage trucks come backing up to the campfire. The sound of air brakes pierces through Poppy's microphone. The bandits walk up to the second truck. The back slides open, revealing several large crates. 4 men go to the crates with one on either side, pulling them out and onto the ground. The back of the first truck opens. Several bandits exit the building, with the prisoners bound and blindfolded, walking them in a single-file line. As they reach the truck, the bandits push each prisoner into the back. The bandit leader stands by the campfire looking on. He's wrapped in a long gray trench coat, with a hood covering the top of his head, and stands still with his arms crossed as the driver and passenger side doors open on both trucks. Very tall and slender figures emerge from the cabs. Poppy zooms his lens toward the figures. They move at a very slow pace, as if tiptoeing toward the bandit leader. The slim beings stand at 7 feet in height, wearing long, tattered coats. Half of their faces are hidden by the collar of the coat zipped up. The only body parts visible are the top of their pale, bald heads and their bright blue eyes. All 4 beings are identical in look, shape, and height. The leader waves to the figures and speaks in a polite yet callous tone. "Here they are, as requested. This should finish out our contract with the Sandman." The beings make it over to the leader, and the closest figure bends over to the bandit. With a soft, raspy voice, the towering humanoid responds, "Yes, you are correct." The figure speaks very deliberately, so it can articulate each letter properly. "As promised, 4 crates of weapons and supplies." The voices are too low for Poppy to pick up with the microphone. The automaton scurries out of the bushes and heads to the first truck. The bandits are too occupied with the prisoners to notice the 3-foot robot. Poppy slides underneath the truck and crouches next to the rear passenger tire. Peering out, Rod and Elena can see the leader still speaking with one of the slender figures. Unfortunately, they are still not able to hear their conversation. Crouched low, the robotic ninja sneaks from under the truck, advancing closer to the conversation. 1 step at a time, Poppy inches its way over. The hunters are now able to receive the conversation, though a bit too late. "Well, tell your boss if he needs any more work done to contact us." Poppy is only several feet away from the bandit leader and lurching figure when a raspy voice penetrates the darkness from behind. Poppy turns to see another figure tiptoeing closer. Several indistinct sounds are made between the 2 figures like dying hyenas. The closest slender being looks back to the bandit leader. "Is this some kind of a trick?" Tense, the bandit leader steps back, pulling a pistol, pointing it at the being that looks strikingly like a pencil wearing a trench coat. Several of the other bandits see and draw their guns. "That ain't mine, and if it ain't mine, it must be yours." He cocks the hammer back and yells out to his comrades, "It's a trick, boys! Ice these motherfuckers!" Before he can fire, the figure ahead of him squats down several feet, revealing 6 spider-like legs, 3 on either side of the torso. The black and red exoskeleton of the legs shines against the flame of the campfire. The arthropod scurries and leaps at the leader. He jumps back to avoid the attack, but trips over his own feet. The leader falls to the ground, scurrying with his hands and feet as the creature scuttles over him. The other bandits open fire, but are intercepted by the 3 other spider-like creatures pouncing across the site. The leader is directly under the creature. Before he can react, green ooze drops onto his chest, burning his skin. He cries out, but no one is able to help. A mouth opens up, displaying 2 black fangs. The leader tries to fire a shot, but the fangs puncture the man's abdomen. Again, he cries out in horrific pain as the fangs shred his insides into a gelatinous paste.
A pinkish tendril slithers from the dark void of the creature's mouth and sucks up the organ slop like a smoothie. Once the ooze is devoured, the arthropod demon vomits more saliva to dissolve the rest of the body into the same human paste. Poppy, hidden underneath the truck again, watches the events play out, giving Rod and Elena as much strategic information as possible. "Shit, arachnids," Rod grunts, climbing out of the seat. He hurries to the back of the van. "Here, take this." He turns back as Elena throws a small device at him. He catches it, looking at it and then back at her. "Put it in your ear so we can communicate with each other. Just push the small button when you want to talk." He nods and places it in his right ear. He turns to Stacy as Elena opens the back hatch. A small ramp comes out from underneath and lowers to the ground. He digs through the saddlebag until he pulls out a small container. The hurried hunter opens it, grabs 6 slugs, and loads them into the revolver. Flicking his wrist, Rod snaps the barrel into place and holsters it into his left side. He takes the bike to the edge and pushes it down the ramp, hopping on in mid-descent. He fires the engine and speeds off toward the campsite. In no time, the rider comes up on the site, which is in total disarray. Each arachnid is devouring a bandit, with one of the spider-like creatures chasing down another. He spots 3 of the arachnids, but doesn't detect the 4th. Suddenly, the missing creature leaps out high above the ruined wall to his right. The 6 legs sprawl out as it plunges at him. The demon is close enough that Rod can make out the black fangs fluttering in anticipation for their next encroaching feast. The rider, however, has a different plan. He pulls out his revolver, Damon Malum, and fires at the center of the arachnid. The shot shatters against the creature's skin and ignites like thermite, melting its organs from the inside. The impact from the slug sends the arachnid flying back, knocking it against the wall, then falling to the ground. The lifeless bug lays on its back, with its hairy legs stiffening. Stacy roars toward the remaining demons. As the arachnid dies, its body releases a pheromone, signaling to the others that it is in danger. The leader pauses from its human smoothie to discern the birth of the pheromones from one of its fallen brethren. The tattered trench coat still drapes over its body. The bright blue eyes spot the invading motorcycle. It calls out to the other 2 arachnids with its raspy voice. "Someone approaches. Deal with it." The leader crawls to the first truck with the prisoners still inside, too frightened to escape. Reaching the driver's side, the creature stands erect. Its legs vanish into the trench coat, tiptoeing and positioning itself into the truck. The doors close and the 3-axle truck roars off. As Rod approaches the fleeing truck, the other 2 demons come scurrying in his direction. One of the spider creatures explodes unexpectedly. It tumbles over a couple of times before stopping, legs pointing skyward. Hollering bursts out from Rod's earpiece. "Take that, you nasty sons of bitches!" Elena was able to snipe one of the arachnids as it scurried after Rod. The second creature leaps at the rider. He shifts his weight on the bike, lowering it to one side, allowing Rod to dodge the incoming arachnid projectile. "Keep going! I got this nasty little shit!" Elena exclaims as she fires off another shot, shattering 2 of the legs into several pieces. The mutant spider squeals in its horrible, raspy voice, trying to escape but leaving a trail of thick black blood. Poppy rushes over and launches a stream of fire from a built-in flamethrower. The hair from the creature's legs ignites, engulfing the entire body in flame. It only takes a minute before the insides come to a boil, exploding out of the thin body in cooked chunks. Rod continues his pursuit of the truck, slowing down as he passes through a sharp curve. Looking into the valley, he spots the garbage truck heading for the bridge leading into the ruined city. He accelerates down the grimy road, continuing the pursuit. Crumbling ruins rush by on either side of him, weaving back and forth as the bike dodges debris. "Damn it," he thinks to himself as the truck breaks the plane onto the bridge. Stacy is at peak speed, racing toward the suspension bridge. If he doesn't stop the truck, he will have more than arachnids to contend with. 3 bandit guilds hold specific regions of the city, in a constant struggle over more area and resources. On top of that, a massive crater sits directly in the center of the ghastly metropolis. It contains one of many portals to another realm, commonly known as Hell. The truck is almost halfway across the ghostly bridge, plowing through all obstacles in its way. This gives Rod plenty of runway to catch up easily. He's within shooting distance of the rear passenger tire. It's a gamble. If the truck jackknifes and falls on its side, the prisoners could be injured or worse. The weight could cause another suspension cable to snap, causing the bridge to fall into the black abyss below. The alternative is the vehicle making it to the city. The latter far outweighs any other outcome. He decides to risk it. Reaching with his right hand, he pulls out the 1911 and takes aim. The rider lines his sight at the tire, sliding his index finger over to the trigger. His eye catches movement from his right rearview mirror. He looks again with complete attention. Dark shapes move speedily in his direction. He glances over his shoulder and sees several arachnids rapidly advancing. "Damn it!" Rod snaps, holstering the gun and gripping both handlebars. He keeps up his pursuit of the truck, waiting for the demonic trackers to leap at him. Timing is critical. If he fires off a shot too late, he'll be crushed from the weight of the carcass. Too soon, he becomes a midnight snack. The ravenous creature on his far left scuttles closer, then springs over several rusted automobiles in its path. Building enough momentum, it hops off the last vehicle at Stacy. All 6 legs point inward like daggers toward its prey. Rod draws Demon Malum and points the barrel at the center of the creature. The arachnid's serrated mouth feverishly dances with excitement at the opportunity to ingest the human in its path. A large slug bursts from the barrel, ripping through the creature's body, exploding innards out of the top of its head. The sheer explosive force from the revolver sends the corpse flying in the opposite direction, straight off the bridge. Sounds of crashing metal come from Rod's right. He looks, barrel pointing. The second arachnid used one of the metal corpses as a springboard, while Rod's attention was to the left. This one is too close to shoot at. Rod swerves left, missing the demon spider's attack. On impact, the 6 legs push off the road toward Rod, trying to ram him off the bridge. He applies the gas, dodging the arachnid that's now on his left. The bright blue eyes look on in surprise as the barrel of Demon Malum stares them down. The trigger is pulled before the spider demon can make an evasive maneuver. The demon's head vanishes into the twilight, sending the lifeless body spiraling forward and crashing into the back of the massive vehicle. The shock fishtails the garbage truck. It swerves wildly to the right, then back to the left. Tipping over on its right side, the metal beast crashes into the road. The truck slides several yards forward before screeching to a halt. The bald head of an arachnid pops out of the driver's side window. Rod keeps his speed as he closes in on the flipped container. The arachnid's legs are pinned in, which gives Rod enough time to slide Stacy next to the roof of the garbage truck. Quickly, he springs up to the caught creature, unsheaths his sword, and slices the arachnid's head clean off. Black blood shoots out of the wound like a geyser. The last 2 creatures advance toward the truck, one on either side of Rod. One demon rears up on its hind legs, revealing its 2 great black teeth from its jagged mouth. Rod pulls out a small thermal grenade and flings it across his body. The grenade disappears into the dark void of the demon's mouth. The arachnid explodes, with fleshy bits flying in all directions. Rod sprints to the remaining demon. With sword in hand, Rod slices the first 2 legs of the last arachnid. Thick blood spurts out liberally as he spins counterclockwise and jams the blade into the creature's mouth. Rod pulls the blade outward, creating a gash. The demonic spider grunts as entrails explode from the wound, then falls to the ground. It twitches as the organs pump the last of the creature's blood. Taking several long breaths, Rod studies the surroundings. No sign of any more spider men. Realizing that he's on the other side of the bridge, he hastens back up the truck to the driver's side door. The stench of contaminated flesh mixed with piss fill the cab. Taking a step back to compose himself, the hunter takes a deep breath and turns back to the arachnid. The pumping blood from the creature's neck has subsided. He crouches next to the window and peers into the cockpit. The center console is very sophisticated. A geospatial map displays the route of the truck and its destination. So, the truck was on a set path. Who was controlling them? Glancing back at the headless arachnid, Rod checks the monitor one more time. He stares at the blinking destination dot for several seconds, then looks around the surrounding region. Shit, we're not far off. The dark feeling envelops Rod's senses as the darkness of his soul speaks. Something's coming. Rod crouches, listening to the world in hopes of being able to catch a clue of what's coming. A faint gust of wind tickles his ears. He thinks nothing of it at first. Still perched on the truck like a gargoyle, the cold tickle tiptoes back and taps across his face in rhythmic gusts. His eyes broaden. Looking down into the cockpit, he scans for a button to open the back hatch of the 8-ton metallic beached whale. He spots a wide oval button to the left corner of the monitor. Rod unsheaths his sword and points it to the control. Hitting the trigger on the hilt, the blade shoots out and punctures the button. The back hatch opens. The lid scrapes across the road, echoing throughout the city. He cringes, knowing that others heard the sound as well. Dashing to the back of the truck and dropping down to the opening, Rod peers into the dark hole. Is anyone alive? He pauses for a moment to catch any signs of life. There is faint sniffling, then a frightened voice responds.
Yes, we all are.
Good. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm a hunter, and there is a contract for missing people around the depot and Midland. He moves his hand into the lightless holding cell. We aren't safe here. Something's coming. We need to find a place to hide. Another pause of silence before a hand reaches out to Rod. He grasps it to help the woman out. Her clothes are tattered and ripped. He nods and asks her to stand away from the truck. One by one, he helps each prisoner out of the moving prison. 6 men, 5 women, and 5 young girls, no more than 9 or 10 years of age. Dazed and bruised, but all alive. Each person wears the same type of clothing, light-fitted and ragged. The colors came in white or light brown. From the looks of it, the people are still wearing their pajamas. Rod can only surmise the people were snatched in the night. They were taken off guard while the others were most likely murdered in their sleep. Rod walks around the truck, then back toward the bridge. It's too long of a walk at this point. He needs to find cover until the threat leaves. Stopping, a faint sound of flapping occurs overhead. They're getting close. He turns his attention to the city, signaling the prisoners to follow. Urgently, they move away from the bridge and into the metropolis. Withered and decrepit, the city lingers ominously, the towering skyscrapers looming over them in the distance. Battles have been waged here for many years between Mother Nature and the constructions of man. Plants burst from the faded concrete in spurts along the road, while vines crawl toward the desolate sky above, turning the drab buildings to delicate hues of green, though hidden under cover of night. Windows in most of the antique constructions have been destroyed by branches from nature's lengthy grip. Discolored automobiles line the roads much like the bridge. Vermin and other small animals scurry from one corroded heap to another as the group moves deeper into the city. The first available building they come across, Rod points and directs them to head inside. The echo of wings cutting the air is much louder now. Everyone runs to the building. Rod closes the door as the last child enters, telling them to crouch low and remain quiet. Moving to the corner window, Rod is able to see the garbage truck and touches the earpiece. Elena, you there? Static interrupts the low hum, followed by the young hunter's whimsical laugh.
Hell yeah, I'm here.
I have the prisoners. Unfortunately, we're across the bridge.
Shit. Well, that bites the big one.
Yeah, tell me about it. What's your ETA?
We were on your tail and saw the arachnids heading in your direction. I spotted the nest they were coming from. Hold on."
The sound of raspy screams fills Rod's earpiece.
"Ha ha 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 ha! Die, you ugly sons of bitches!"
Elena cries out with another maniacal laugh. A barrage of bullets rattles through the earpiece. Another set of raspy screams blare through with the blowing sound of Poppy's flamethrower. Elena's voice overcomes the horrific jingles of death.
"Sorry, I'm back. Once we clear the nest, we'll pick you up. Do you think she's here? Could she have survived?"
"I don't know. I doubt it. I've never seen arachnids act like this, wearing coats and talking." It was indeed odd for these demons to take on human characteristics. These particular arachnids were somehow more intelligent than their previous encounter. Before, they were nothing more than drones, following orders from their hive mother. The fact that they actually spoke and showed a semblance of emotion perplexed Rod. "No," he continues. "This is something else. Be careful. I'll see you when you get here. Hurry." Rod drops his right hand from his ear, inspecting the ammo supply in his 1911. He holsters the pistol and pulls out the revolver. Reaching into his belt pouch, the hunter pulls out several slugs and loads them into Damon Malum. Holstering the beast, he peers back out the window. He takes this newly acquired information and stores it away, deep in his mind. Now's not the time for investigation. Something's coming, and fast. The hunter needs to keep his full attention on the incoming threat. The once silent murmur of wings flapping erupts into high-pitched, rapid flutter. The light of the moon reveals a cluster of small shadows advancing overhead. Rod turns to the prisoners and places his index finger over his lips. He squats down, still staring out the frame in hopes of catching a glimpse at the source of the shades. The sounds ring through the city like a murder of crows on its trek south for the winter. An object drops to the ground several feet in front of the window. The small, gangly creature, with its back turned, raises its head and sniffs the air. Its wrinkly skin is pale, with a hue of green in the moon's light. Small, bat-like wings connect between its shoulder blades. It finds the scent of humans. That sweet aroma of sweat and fear excites the creature as it turns to the old brick building. The creature's face is smooth with bulging eyes. The cartilage from the nose is gone. All that remains are two slanted holes expanding and contracting as it sniffs for its prey. The eyes are black, with its mouth missing many teeth. Those that remain are crooked and yellow. The little demon slobbers as it scampers toward the door of the building, still sniffing and looking about. What the creature lacks in pure eyesight, it more than makes up in its precise sense of smell. As it closes in on the door, Rod positions himself between it and the prisoners. The doorknob turns. The sound of heavy snorting lurks in as the door creaks open. The bulbous black eyes peer through. Saliva streams steadily as the grotesque being cracks a hideous smile. It found dinner. The door swings open, and the gawky entity enters. Rod points his grappling hook and fires at the pale demon's neck. Hitting his mark, Rod reels the creature to him. He grasps the demon by the neck when it arrives at the would-be fisherman. It whimpers and squeals, fighting for freedom. Rod squeezes with all his might, snapping its neck, killing the creature instantly. He walks back to the corner, then drops the horrid corpse on the floor. One of the men walks over to the hunter.
"What is that vile creature?"
His eyes are fixed on the carcass. Rod turns to the man. "It's an imp. That vile creature, as you so aptly put it, was once a child, possessed by a lesser demon." The look of fear and disgust in the man's eyes fade to pity and remorse for the small child that had to endure such a ghastly experience.
"Dear God,"
the man bellows, kneeling over the creature to examine it. He touches the pastel face. "No doubt one of the missing children," Rod replies, walking back to a window on the opposite side of the room. scouting to see if any more imps have caught their scent. Shadows flutter back and forth over the street. He keeps his gaze out into the dark world before divulging more information on the pitiful presence laying in the corner. The demon's stench begins to fill the room. Each person slowly steps back as the odor of rotten eggs mixed with fermented mushrooms clouds their senses. The longer the child is possessed, Rod continues, the more they change, morphing into the demon. He scans the corpse again and looks back at the man. This one's different. Different? How so? The man answers, bewildered. I've never seen one this far along. Most children die after several weeks of a possession. How long has this one been possessed? The man reluctantly asks. He swallows hard, in fear of the hunter's answer. Anxiety starts to spider up the man's legs. This child's fate could have been his. His palms start to sweat excessively from the thought of losing himself to such evil. Rod walks back to the corpse. He kneels, inspecting it thoroughly, before looking up to the man as his theory takes shape. I'd say almost a year, and judging by the shadows moving across the ground outside, there are a lot more like it. Several of the women gasp, while one of the children cries from the hunter's words. A woman takes the child into her arms, comforting her. Rod looks over to the woman, then to the window. He's dying for a cigarette at this point, but knows the odor will attract the winged demons. He battles the temptation for a moment. The rescued prisoners stand in silence, in hopes that the hunter is devising a cunning plan. To the contrary, he's just winging it, as Gramps often coined Rod's exploits. The ignorant, Gramps usually started off, would think his plans are teetering on the thread of just might be crazy enough to work. Experience taught me that more often than not, it was just dumb fucking luck. Rod looks back at the inquisitive man in the corner. I wouldn't be too concerned with the imps. Why not? 'Cause if those are the missing children, and they did get twisted into imps, what happened to the adults? The man stands in quiet contemplation. He wasn't sure if the question is rhetorical or if Rod is actually expecting him to answer. Imp was never in his vocabulary, and he never knew anything like this was even possible. The empathic man heard of people being possessed. For a year, however, just seemed outrageous. He looks again at the haunted child in complete despair. If planewalkers could do this, what would happen if they could take physical form without possession? Then he wondered what they would look like. The thought switches to agonizing pain. Not a metaphorical pain for the creature, but a physical pain in his gut. The man looks down in bewildered astonishment as a dark, scaly hand is embedded in his stomach. The arm broke through the wall, impaling the poor man. Time slows to a crawl. Piece by piece, the wall ahead of him comes toppling down. As the portions of the wall fall, the owner of the hand becomes quite visible. The creature is much larger than the imp. The eyes, unlike the imp's, are more human, like a man wearing a well-tailored monster suit. The nostrils are slanted like the imp's, with jagged yellow teeth. The creature still has long, thin strands of hair coming from its head, laying across the left side of its face. The demon opens its cracked mouth and smiles. A waterfall of saliva rushes between the discolored teeth. Advancing toward the man's face, the teeth pierce and rip the flesh from his neck. He can see his blood splatter across the creature's face as it pulls back with a chunk of flesh. Total shock overtakes him. Weightlessness overwhelms the pain from his wounds as the larger, imp-like demon flings the man through the window and out onto the street. No pain registers as he crashes onto the road. He helplessly looks on as a group of imps flies in, each creature ripping large chunks of flesh. The demons gnaw on raw meat like wild animals, jagged, stained teeth.
Then darkness is the last thing the man sees. An imp takes a generous bite at the man's face. The demon rears back, taking the nose and eyes with attached skin. The poor soul fades from existence as more imps swarm in for their share. Rod charges the creature as the unsuspecting man flies through the window. As he picks up momentum, the hunter lowers his shoulders and knocks the creature through the hole it created. It hits the ground, dazed, giving Rod the opportunity to pull the revolver from sleep, firing a slug. On impact, the shot explodes the creature's head into gooey bits. He takes several steps back, shielding the remaining prisoners from the onslaught of imps clawing their way through both windows. The dismembered body parts start to pile on the floor as Rod slices through each creature. Eventually, the severed bodies stuck in the window block the remaining hellspawn from entering. Looking past the huddled prisoners, Rod spots a door leading to the back. "See if you can find a way out from the back room." He points to the decay-covered door, barely hanging on its hinges. The remaining men head to the door while dragging the women. Their arms are intertwined in a human lock. Rod turns back to the front. The taller creatures and imps are fighting each other for access to the hole in the corner. He reaches for a thermal grenade. Pulling the pin, Rod lobs it at the hole and sprints to the next room. The grenade blasts as it hits the floor. The corner ceiling collapses the hole in the wall, squishing the remaining demons that are not flown back from the shockwave. In a domino effect, the entire ceiling crumbles. Rod, lying on the ground from the explosion, hurriedly gets to his feet. Spotting the door in the far corner, he takes off, avoiding the ceiling disintegrating all around him. The nimble hunter glances left and right to make sure no prisoners are still inside. The coast seems to be clear. He picks up speed, jutting left then right from falling pieces of ceiling fragments and rusted pipes. A young woman peers into the doorway, waving for him to hurry up. Debris starts to cover the doorway. He needs to jump now or he'll be trapped in the rubble. Rod pushes off his left foot with all of his might, diving toward the door. He darts through as sections of the ceiling crash down, covering the doorway. Getting up, Rod smacks the dust from his jacket and pants. He inquires of the group, "Everyone okay?" They nod. Rod clicks the earpiece as he heads to the corner of the building. "Elena, what's your ETA?" Her voice is masked by sharp static. Screams burst from behind. Rod turns to the group. They are fighting off a swarm of imps swooping in from above. Two of them latch onto a woman, lifting her into the air. She's no more than 6 feet up before falling back to the earth as Rod puts a bullet into each of the creature's head. Another gangly imp grabs a younger lady from behind. Her gray nightgown dances as she screams and swats at the tiny beast. Rod takes aim and fires his grappling hook at the pest, snagging one of the wings. The cable tightens and retracts, pulling the imp off the frightened dancer. It struggles as it inches closer to the hunter. To his left, several prisoners are fighting off another group of imps, hovering just out of arm's reach. An idea strikes him. Rod pulls the 1911 and fires a shot at the struggling imp, killing it. Grasping both hands together, Rod musters up enough strength to use the corpse as a makeshift discus. He goes into one full rotation, releasing the hook at the right time for maximum momentum. The winged corpse flies into the air like a ragdoll, knocking the hovering swarm into the wall. The force of the collision directs each of the imps into the collapsed rubble. "Damn, I hope that's all of them." Two of the women yell at the hunter, pointing to the sky. Rod looks up. One of the children is snatched by a larger winged demon. Due to its wingspan, the creature made its ascent to the top of the adjacent building with relative ease. Rod takes another deep breath, then points his arm to the roof of the building. He looks at the prisoners. "Stay in the alley until help arrives," then fires the grappling hook. He leaps to the ledge and climbs to the roof, scanning the area for the demon. The girl grunts and moans to his right. Immediately, he takes off in the direction of the sounds. Another rooftop creeps up. He leaps from the ledge to the next building. Landing safely, he picks up the pace. At the end of the roof, he can see the creature and the girl. She's wrapped in its gray arms, still struggling with all her might. The demon's long, bat-like wings flap violently, sending the two higher into the night sky. The hunter must pick up the pace if he's going to gain any ground. His lungs are on fire from the ordeal they've all been through, with no rest since the stakeout at the bandit campsite. The gray-skinned demon ascends at a devilishly rapid pace. Rod knows he won't make it on foot. He is close enough to fire the grappling hook. If the hunter hooks the ankle, maybe the creature can be reeled in. At least get the demon into range so he could maim it with his gun. No time to debate. Taking aim, Rod fires at the creature, nabbing its Achilles tendon. The beast is caught off guard and loosens its grip on the girl. Screaming, she slips through its clutches. Luckily, the creature grabs hold of the girl by the shoulder. Clutching tightly, its claws drive into her flesh. Wincing in pain, the blonde girl cries out again. Occupying the demon gives Rod time to reel them closer to him. He takes aim with his pistol, lining the sight up to the back of the demon's head. With several deep flaps of its wings, the demon creates strong gusts to knock Rod off his feet, slamming him down on the roof. The creature secures its grasp of the girl and continues its rise again, this time pulling Rod with them. Sliding across the roof, the demon hunter is unable to secure footing. He takes the chance to retract the cable, pulling him closer to his mark. Rod isn't heavy enough to bring the demon down, so he's lifted off the roof and into the air. Trailing several yards behind them, the cool wind rushes against his face as they climb higher and higher. As the cable continues to inch closer to the soaring pair, Rod makes a mental note of the direction the creature is leading them and determines the demon's destination. In the distance sits a looming skyscraper, towering above all other buildings. Maybe not the tallest at its creation, but its concrete lords have since fallen to the decayed earth below its feet. A wide crater sits at the base of the building, black and hollow, plunging down into the very depths of hell. A cold chill fills Rod's soul as they fly their way to the multi-storied building. Pipes with running water extrude out of the earth around the perimeter of the abysmal dark hole. Vines and various vegetation cover the lower half of the 70-story building. Making it to the grappled heel, Rod grabs both feet. Using his body weight to slow the creature down, he tries to steer them away from the tower. Exhaustion takes its toll on the demon. Its wings slow, which in turn increases their descent to the almost mile-wide hollow grave. Rod doesn't hesitate and climbs up the demon's back. Grasping at the base of the left wing, the hunter reaches for the terrified girl. The demon loses consciousness, sending the trio into a free fall. Rod breaks the grip and grabs hold of the young girl. Though he cannot hear the screams of the frightened child as they plummet to the earth, Rod does notice the tears running down her cheek, evaporating into the cool night air. The hunter braces her against his chest and turns so his back is facing the earth. He whispers into the young one's soul, telling her that it will be all right. He will not let anything happen to her. They vanish into the darkness of the crater.